Please welcome to the stage, Rose Saia! Yeah, hi, all right.
Thank you. I was standing in a conference room making a presentation overlooking the Boston seaport. And when I finished, I asked if anyone had any questions. And a man raised his hand and asked, "Where did you come from?" And I looked around the room, which was all men, and I knew what he was really asking. You see, I was CEO of a software company, and I had gotten so used to being in a room full of men that I had forgotten what it was like for them to see me. I guess he thought I had come from MIT or Harvard, when really, I had come from a place I could see right outside the conference room window. You see, I grew up in Irish South Boston, even though I'm Italian, and I went to Catholic school where the nuns were really strict, and they didn't let us talk to each other during the day, and I was just fine with that. Because after school, all the Irish kids would yell, "There goes the Dago, Wop, Guinea girl." And when I was little, I would just walk home and cry. In 4th grade, the name-calling turned into threats, and I would find notes in my desk saying that somebody was going to beat me up after school. So I would walk home in the middle of the street, because then I could hear the footsteps of the boys hiding in the alleys next to the houses as they ran toward me, and I'd get a head start. But they would then surround me and push me back to the sidewalk and say, "You don't belong here. Go live with your own kind." And then I'd swing my book sack at them, and they'd scatter, and I'd run home and get inside and just collapse, sweaty and shaking. One day, my father had come home early, and he found me like that, and after I calmed down, he said, "Well, you're a girl, and girls can't beat boys up. Find something in common with them. Try to get along." I didn't find that very helpful. But I did have some friends that I had something in common with. There was soft-spoken Michelle, whose mother was French, and curly-haired Colette, who had a Swedish father and big Swedish brothers, and my best friend Ellen, whose dad had been a boxer back in Wales. And I sat at lunch with them every day, and one day when I opened my lunch bag, I found 2 fresh-baked Italian cookies. You know those soft pillows with the white icing and the sprinkles? And I took one of them and I broke it into 3 pieces so they could each have a bite. And that's when I saw a boy named Tim get up from his table and come walking toward me. He stood next to me and said, "So, Guinea girl, are you going to share that cookie with me?" And then I felt his hand come around my shoulder, and his fist smashed the cookie, and the bits of it went flying all over my friends and the table. Michelle was picking bits of cookie out of her sweater, and she looked up at him and said, "You're an asshole." And he walked toward her, and Colette turned her curly head and said, "If you keep coming toward her, I'll tell my brothers to beat the shit out of you." And then he backed up and started to come toward me, and Ellen jumped right into his face and said, "If you take another step toward her, I'll beat the shit out of you." And then the nuns swooped in like bats and grabbed us by our shoulders and pushed us back to class. And that night when I told my mother what happened, she said that after dinner we were going to make everyone cookies. And I tried to tell her this was not about cookies, but she was not hearing it. So the next day, I passed out the cookies during morning snack, and Tim took his cookie and he looked around and he put it in his pocket. And then the other boys near him saw what he did, and they put their cookies in their pockets. And when I walked through the big lunchroom doors, Tim was standing there with the boys lined up behind him, blocking my way to the table. He walked forward, and I walked forward, and the whole lunchroom was quiet and watching. He went for his pocket, and then he said, "This is for the cookie I broke yesterday." And I looked down, and I saw a cookie covered in pocket lint, melting, with the frosting just melting in his sweaty hand, and I really didn't want it. But I wanted it all to end. "You keep it. Why don't you sit at our table and I'll share the rest of the cookies?" So the boys just fought over each other for the chairs at the table, and then you heard the rustle of the lunch bags and sandwiches coming out. And then it got really quiet because boys and girls didn't sit at the same tables back then. Until I said, "Who thinks the Red Sox are going to win the World Series?" And that got everybody talking about Yaz and what the best prizes were in Cracker Jacks at Fenway. And we just talked all through lunch. That afternoon on the way home from school, I heard footsteps coming up behind me, and I turned, and I saw Tim and the boys running toward me, and I thought, I don't have anything left for this. I can't do it. And then I heard, "Hey, wait up. Didn't you hear us calling you? We're walking your way." And as they surrounded me, I realized that I hadn't heard them because it was the first time they had used my name. Thank you.